let's face it, the level one, because it is so wired for the decaying process and everything breaking down and the bones getting brittle and the skin losing elasticity, and all of these things, the eyesight going, the entire mechanism starts to break down from being worn. So nobody wants to deal with that. So the game for most will take them to that point. Of course, well, the game is set up like that. So if you enter that space, you are like, the last thing on your mind now is trying to move through that. You're already struggling, you're walking with a cane, or you've gone into the standard program of illnesses around those particular set of cycles that has been sort of suggested when you should start falling apart or getting sick or whatever the case may be. So at that point, people they just don't even want to feel that anymore. So they don't have enough life force, like in video games. They don't have enough life force to actually take them past that, to actually make it through that point and then regenerate. The regenerating, it's just, once you get to that point, it becomes challenging, because you already are not equipped. You didn't have even the tools of potentials in your mind to begin with, so you're not operating on anything that could do that. But to have the knowledge, to have this information, is the greatest way to begin to move forward. Is the understanding, it's the knowing, it's the continuously strengthening that platform, continuously making your foundation stronger with understanding, so that your body once again is getting that information. And we're not relying really just on external things to make it happen, but we're using external things to support a natural transformation that is occurring in us, natural adjustments that are occurring in us, natural recoding that's occurring in us, and what other natural thought can I think of? But a natural releasing then, or uncovering the natural program, the natural information that is already there, that says this body can live indefinitely, because it does have that information there. It definitely has it, but it's overshadowed by the death program and the acceptance of the death program as reinforced every day around us in every which way. So it's that understanding that is going to make it happen. Okay. Okay, so one of the things that I did see, which is true, that aging is caused, it says aging is caused by physics and not by biology. That's interesting, but aging is caused by physics and not by biology. Now, let's think about that. It's everything I just said, but it's caused by physics. What do they mean by that? Meaning that it's the imposition then, or the response to our environment. It's the dealing with all of the things in our environment. That's what it's saying. All of the conditions in our environment, from pollution to just the overall stress of the environment on the body. I think the body's constant opposing gravity, trying to oppose gravity as opposed to being, pulled the other way. Here we are, we're standing up, even though you see some people eventually they start, bending, things start succumbing to gravity. And if we think about it, it's kind of interesting, it just really hit me. Interesting. When we say we spend our time, we're opposing gravity. So we're upright. And as people lose that battle, as you lose that battle, what happens? You end up what? Flat on the ground. People end up being buried. Opposing gravity, no more. You no longer can stand straight up. Now you succumb to it. So you're pulled down and pulled ever so even further into the earth. You know, I'm just saying, but technically, if you look at it, so the body obviously eventually goes back to the soil itself. So we want to realize again the idea that it's not really the biology, but the environment. Now, we understand that the environment has major impacts on us. You know, people talk about radiation. Again, like I said, smog, noise, the water. Even if it wasn't that at one point, still the environment at some point seemed like it eventually aged people. It took a toll on them. And that's simply because the further away we are or become from the naturalness of the environment or being aligned with nature, is the more challenging it is on the body. Well, obviously, it's more than just being aligned with nature, but it's more of being aligned with nature, and at the same time, us taking our thought process, our understanding to this greater level. Now, nature, as we've talked about, exists in, like everything else, exists in these in layers of dimensions, layers of potentiality. So nothing is as it appears to be. A rock for us looks like, you know, whatever we think a rock looks like, but yet it exists in multiple realms of form. But all that we can engage in is what we've been conditioned, how we've been conditioned to see everything in a particular crystallized pattern. So we're conditioned to see only the topical version of nature of all of these things according to the programming of, you know, this version of reality. So the rock and the mountains and the trees, everything appears in the form that we seem to embrace it in, because that's the form it exists in, relevant to this reality, relevant to the frequency of this environment. Then let's say this matrix environment, this realm that we find ourselves in, everything in it is existing in that physical space, in that crystallized form, based on the space itself. But it doesn't mean that that's the finality, the final expression of any of it. And that's something that we really need to become really more cognizant of, so that we can begin to actually see the deeper levels and the deeper layers and the other realms of possibilities that all of these things exist in, because it's like portals everywhere. It's like, you know, all these different portals. We don't know the rock, right? You go into the realm of the rock, and there are all these different potential, you know, expressions that it then exists in. Now you're seeing that realm, and trees and plants and everything around us, just like us, exist in many different forms. I think those things are very important to remember, because the death aspect is really just attached to the program of a final form, the program, the blueprint of the physical body, the physical world, and that's why death happens. That's why the expiration process can happen, because it doesn't go, our minds don't go any further than what the eyes see, the appearance of, you know, the eyes, the physical. And so it expires. Now, if we could open that up to see the other potentialities or the other potential expressions of ourself and everything else, then we're in a more fluid state. We're more flowing and moving in and out of everything. And as I've said a while back, you know, the elements, that we are the elements. We are, you know, that's why, what is it? All the elements exist in us. Not only do they exist in us, but we are made up of all these elements. You know, we're talking about fire, water, air, excuse me, these gases, yet all these elements are an aspect of one another. And so are we. So this alchemical process that we're talking about, a transformation, we are actually having to go through, we're actually, oh, what's the languaging for this? We're actually becoming or being air, you know, water, fire, the gases. We're actually allowing yourself to see yourself as all of these different elements, all of these elements. That's part of the alchemical makeup, is that realization. So this idea of immortality or of timeless living, timelessness, it is that journey into the beingness of all of it, of fire, of water, of gases. It's being all of it. And if you think about it, you would have to come into that realization and acknowledgement and allowingness of being all of it, because what we talk about with what takes out the human body is, you know, the environment adds to the aging. Well, if you are all of it, if you become it, then you can't be in conflict. If you're fire, you can't get burned, right? If you're the gases, you can't get destroyed. You can't get radiation, you know, poisoning that destroys the body. You know, if you just can't. If you're all of these elements, it does not happen. You can't, it just can't be done. So it's the journey of being and the remembering and the realization of being all of it. And you look at the ancients and the various cultures, and you look at the things that they said and what they did, the challenge, it seems like, at least based on what we documented history, because it's what's not documented where the power is. It's what's not seen, what's not written about is where the power is. And I lost my trend of thought. I was going to say something about, if you notice, they tend to either worship something or incorporate. Okay, so the challenge with what we see with the documented history and those people is because they became fragmented. We have a tendency to fragment. Suddenly, we're going to worship fire, or we're just going to do this thing, or we're going to do that thing. We have to become holistic. And that was one of the things that was, now that I look back on the time that I was going and hanging out with Wiccans and going to their gatherings and classes, is the manner in which they embrace the four directions and the seasons and how they do that. But then they miss a bigger picture. But at the same time, they were understanding a certain level of this that we've tossed out. So that is very important. And excuse me, I think I saw that. I think I really started paying attention. When we went to the Sequoias, the first time when we had the retreat in the Sequoias, and there was a conversation I was having with one of the people, one of the participants that had come, and the conversation had something to do with about the rock and so on, and whatever she was saying, I can't remember specifically now. But in that moment, I saw the multiple layers, the multiple potentialities of that rock. And I started to express that to her. And she said to me, she goes, I never saw it like that before. I never noticed. Because what we want to do is we're embracing nature, and the mountains are so beautiful, and the waterfall is so beautiful, and the rocks are so beautiful, but that's it. We make them just the crystallized version that we see. The tree, the rock, the water. We go no deeper than that. We go no further than that. And that's why we expire. That's why people expire, because we go no further than the physical appearance of our world. We don't allow our brains to allow us. I always have to change that languaging because our brain knows it does. It's all connected anyway with it. But we don't give permission to see more, to explore more. All right, so that now just popped into my mind again. One of the things that I have been saying is that not only will death be a primitive concept, but they're also going to realize that when people expire, that they've really just gone into some sort of limbo state. Really, they really don't necessarily, they're really not gone, permanently gone. And I'm not talking about the afterlife. I'm talking about the physical right now, that the body, that they really have gone into some sort of paused state. But because nobody seems to remember, and when I say nobody, I'm just talking about the nobody in terms of how we view our world, remembers how to reactivate or regenerate the mechanism. Nobody knows how to restart it, how to reset it. And so when that doesn't happen, yeah, the person goes into that death process, decay, going to the ground, and then becomes part of the soil again. However, what is interesting is the Bible's interpretation, or the Bible's makes reference to the idea of the body even being able to be reformed again, that same body from the dust, like being able to take form again from the dust, to be able to be regenerated again, because all it is the pattern of that form, and the signature and the life force that was streaming through that, which is also a signature that has memory of that form, that pattern. Why couldn't it be possible? These are all things that we're told, don't think like that, you can't think like that, no, that's crazy talk. No, this is science. And once we start looking at all of this in the context of this is science, this is a greater science, a science beyond what we're looking at or understanding in this version of reality, but it's all science with all this other restrictive stuff thrown in, which is where religion comes in with bits of truth, as a matter of fact, with a lot of pieces of truth in it, but it has this shut off, this control factor, to get people to not go past the game, not go past the standard game, but rather to to adhere to the standard protocols of this game, with the opportunity, however, to discover the key, to discover the password, to discover the algorithms, to discover recoding, to discover penetrating the game. And it's like, woohoo,